I recognize you, but can't place where we met.
Okay, actually, I was your campaign volunteer.
Wow.
2014.
Thank you.
Yeah, I made a lot of phone calls to our Chinese voters.
We needed to shake things up in Washington. Do I agree with all her ideas? No two human beings do. But there are 435 members of Congress, and Congress was getting too stale, too rigid. Sometimes when you have someone come in who's disruptive, it forces everyone to think better and different.
So you ran as a moderate. Now I heard some people said you are getting progressive. Did you hear that?
I am a progressive, but I'm also very much pro-entrepreneurship, pro-innovation, pro-technology. I have been leading the call for investments in artificial intelligence, quantum computing, science and technology research, for supporting entrepreneurship and trade. I have opposed the trade war with China and called for a more thoughtful policy towards China. So I would argue that I'm a pro-economic growth progressive, a progressive who believes everyone should have education, healthcare, but that we should celebrate entrepreneurship and innovation.
Well, I think the key perception is that initially you ran as more of a moderate Democrat, but now you kind of aligned yourself with Bernie Sanders and a little bit more on the far left side, and that is the pervasive perception from some of these Republican-leaning Chinese Americans. And what do you say to that?
Well, I say I am proud of the work I did with Bernie Sanders on stopping the war in Yemen. That's why I supported him. We worked for the first time to pass the War Powers Resolution to stop refueling of the planes in the Saudis that were bombing Yemen. And I believe we don't need to have military intervention. China, as you know, has not been to a war since 1979. The United States has been in 40 wars since then, basically. 40 conflicts. So what I agree with the progressives is that we should not be engaged in overseas military intervention to the extent we have. But on economic issues, I've worked with a lot of Republicans also, and have focused on how do we get technology jobs into communities left behind. President Trump actually has signed 2 of my laws. One bill I worked on that he signed would modernize federal websites. Another provides tech entrepreneurship, tech apprenticeships to veterans. I have worked with people like Kevin McCarthy and Senator Tom Cotton. So if you look at my record, I think you'll see a lot of work across the aisle.
That's really great. Since Trump was elected, I think a lot of people inside the Trump administration as well as elected, I think a lot of people inside the Trump administration as well as outside and across industry, there's really the talk and generalization of Chinese students being spies and Chinese researchers being not loyal, and then even the employees at different countries are accused of intellectual theft. So basically, this kind of generalization is very detrimental to the Chinese Americans in this country. So what do you think we should do, or what do you think of that generalization?
Well, it's not just harmful to Chinese Americans. It's immoral, it's wrong, it's un-American. We cannot profile people based on their race, their ethnicity, their nationality. The reality is the Chinese Americans have made such extraordinary contributions to America as scientists, as entrepreneurs, as doctors, as nurses, as teachers, as faith leaders. They have built so much of California, so much of America, and I always speak out about their contributions. And I have been working with Judy Chu, who is the chair of the Congressional Asian American Caucus, and Ted Lieu, and we have advocated in cases where we have seen Chinese Americans being discriminated against. But the broader problem is this president starting a posture of a Cold War against China. I do not believe in that. I believe the United States should focus on our development, our entrepreneurship, our technologies. The way we're going to lead and win in the 21st century is by leading in the technologies of the future. We shouldn't be trying to go put other countries down, and we certainly shouldn't be trying to replicate the hysteria of the Cold War.
You said this president. Do you think Trump should be removed from the office?
Well, I think that's for a process to play out, and there is a impeachment inquiry that will begin in the House. It will begin in September, and then we have to see where the evidence leads and where the facts lead. And I will keep an open mind based on what happens in that inquiry.
So, Congressman, what do you stand and position for trade war with China?
It's wrong. It's misguided. It's hurting our economy. You know how I know it's wrong? Because manufacturing has contracted for the first time in this country in 10 years. If President Trump's trade war was working, we would see more manufacturing jobs. We're seeing less. And if you talk to technology leaders, as I do all the time, what they will tell you is that global supply chains are global. And they aren't being able to get the materials they need to make their parts. And this is why manufacturing is contracting. And the uncertainty is wreaking havoc in our economy. So do I think we need to have strong protections on intellectual property and push to open markets in China? Absolutely. But we have to do that through proper diplomacy. I worked for Gary Locke, when he was Commerce Secretary, and he had an aggressive diplomatic approach to help open markets in China and to deal with intellectual property issues. The way to deal with it is through statescraft, not through tariffs.
Right.
Have you seen the documentary, The American Factory, in Netflix?
I have not watched it yet.
Have you heard that?
I have heard of
Yeah.
it, yes.
Yeah, you've done a fair amount of work in American manufacturing and
Yes.
how to bring that manufacturing activity and factories back to this country. And the original intent for this trade war was to try to get more factories moved back into the U.S. Are you seeing more evidence of that?
No, the evidence is that the manufacturing index has contracted for the first time in 10 years. It's at the lowest level as it was in 2007. Our trade deficit is almost as high. So if this policy was really working, we should have seen manufacturing expand. The reason it isn't expanding is because these supply chains are global. Do you think Apple computers suddenly can go and just leave China? It's unrealistic, and it just conveys a naivete about how integrated the economy of the world is.
Yeah. You know, personally, I'm really concerned about civil liberty and democracy can be very fragile. You know, I think a while back we were in a informal CBC meeting,
Yes.
and I asked you about the Japanese internment camp maybe coming back if the kind of narrative of all Chinese being potential spies. And so how do we protect civil liberty so that the Japanese internment style camp will not be coming back and impose on the Chinese Americans?
Well, it's a big danger. It's a danger not just for Chinese Americans. It's a danger for Muslim Americans to have their civil liberties infringed. It's a danger for Mexican Americans to have their civil liberties infringed. It's a danger for the trans community, the LGBTQ community. This administration has trampled on the civil liberties of many minority communities. And I think we have to stand up in this country for our Constitution, or the belief that every human being has equal rights and dignity and liberty, and that it is illegal for the federal government to profile or discriminate against an individual. Frankly, we need more Republican voices holding the president to account on civil liberties. The Republicans may disagree with me on certain economic issues. They may not want to support Bernie Sanders. They may even want to support Trump. But what I would urge them to do is say, if you are going to support Donald Trump, at least hold him accountable to make sure that he is honoring civil liberties, that he is not stereotyping in the entire Chinese American community.
That's really great.
What's your definition of socialism?
Socialism, wow.
Well, socialism means a government that controls the means of production.
That's great. Yeah,
So,
that's right.
for example, a socialist would believe that the government should control Apple or Google or eBay, and I reject that. I believe in free enterprise. I believe that we do need entrepreneurs and business leaders to run companies. But I believe in progressive capitalism. By that I mean I want to have the government partner with universities, partner with business leaders to create new industries and jobs where everyone has some equity in the growth of the economy.
Yeah, that's right. You identify yourself as a progressive capitalist, but you also the co-chair of Bernie Sanders' campaign, national campaign,
Yes.
right? And usually Bernie Sanders is regarded as or labeled
People call that,
as
these days.
socialist.
But he calls himself a democratic socialist.
So do you
Right.
think that's a wrong label? Because personally, I also agree that it's a means of production is the factories and properties that are controlled by the private sector. But a lot of times, I think people use socialism very liberally, thinking that, oh, if you dish out too many entitlements and give out too many freebies, then you are a socialist. And I'm sure you pay attention to the Democratic nomination process right now. Andrew Yang going up very high, up in the polls. And
Andrew
one-
Yang,
yeah.
he's a good friend of mine.
Yeah,
I mean, I
yeah.
met him, and we've talked, and I'm very happy to see, frankly, an Asian American of his talent doing as well. And I
Absolutely.
think that the entire Asian American community should be very proud of the campaign he's running.
Yeah, I'm personally enormously proud of him, and I'm very impressed with his performance and his ability to communicate, and it really boosts the image of the Asian male, particularly Chinese male.
Yes.
So I'm very impressed. But a lot of the accusations from some people to say is that, well, his UBI idea, giving out $1,000 to everybody, is very socialist. What do you think of that?
Well, Andrew Yang is not a socialist. He was an entrepreneur, and he worked for President Obama, and so I don't think he is in any way believes in socialism. He believes in a strong safety net. Now, I do not, personally, I'm not for a UBI because I still believe in the dignity of work. So I think that if people have the ability to work, we need to try to create good, meaningful jobs. I mean, think about it. I grew up in Pennsylvania. You can't just say, okay, Mark Zuckerberg will go make all the money and mail everyone in Pennsylvania and other states a check. People don't want that. They don't want a handout. They want pride. They want to create value. So I would be for, if someone is disabled, if someone has illness, if someone has an issue where they can't work, then I am for giving them a basic amount of money to live, and that is through the Social Security disability insurance, and I would expand that. But I don't think that every American who can work needs to be just given a UBI. That said, I do believe Andrew Yang is talking about very important issues of technology and has made a great contribution to American politics.
But Andrew Yang respond for this said, if people have 1,000 basic income, so they will create more jobs, more works. He respond like this.
Well, I mean, I think that what people need is healthcare. What they need is education. What they need is infrastructure. And if they have those investments, then they will create jobs. Instead of giving people just cash of $13,000, I rather give them a college education or an education in digital marketing or software. Give them a skill that will allow them to earn a living or have a good career.
You know, the automation and the rise of AI at unprecedented pace certainly will, dislocate a lot of people. I mean, will remove them from regular jobs, lower-end jobs, or even high-end jobs. So I think the prospect of our next generation can seem pretty dim, right?
Well,
So-
I think we're going to create a lot of new jobs and job opportunities. I think technology will end up creating more opportunity. I mean, let's look at the current unemployment rate. I mean, there are a lot of things this president has messed up, but the unemployment rate is 3.8%. So we can't be talking about a jobless future when we're looking at 3.8% unemployment. The bigger problem is how do you get good paying jobs? There are a lot of things that artificial intelligence will never be able to automate. Will it ever be able to automate empathy? Will it ever be able to automate persuasion? Will it ever be able to automate charisma? Will it ever be able to automate leadership? Will it ever be able to automate management? So many of the jobs that are human jobs are not about just detecting patterns.
Right.
So I think what we have to do is prepare people with a technological proficiency and say, now you can live anywhere in the country and you can work anywhere in the world and you don't even have to leave. Right. You're going to have more choice, more opportunity, more possibility today than you ever had before. Because if we want to sell the future, if we want to defeat Donald Trump's vision of nostalgia, where he's saying go back to the past, we have to convince people that the future is not something to be feared, that the future is actually going to mean more choice and opportunity for their families.
Right. You know, speaking of leadership, and I'm very impressed with the Indian Americans' success in the corporate world, even including those people who grew up and were educated in India and came to this country. They were able to rise to the absolute top of the American corporate ladder, and among the top 3 companies in the world. I mean, certainly if you look at, there's a lot of talented Chinese American immigrants who grew up in China, who were educated there. They are certainly extremely intelligent, and we're not seeing hardly any leaders rise up to the very top in American-run or American-owned companies or international companies. What do you think is the reason, and how do we help the Chinese Americans and the immigrants and these engineers to become better leaders and do better in America?
Well, first of all, I think Chinese Americans have also done very well, and there has been discrimination against Indian Americans in the corporate suites for many, many years. It's just recently that you've seen breakthroughs with Sundar Pichai at Google and Satya Nadella at Microsoft. But I would say even a decade ago or 2 decades ago, Indian Americans couldn't be CEOs, and they would say they have funny names, or that they don't have the right appearance, or that they don't have the right accent. So we have seen society, I think, become more open. But I do think that there is unfortunately still discrimination against Chinese Americans. I think Chinese Americans may face more stereotypes than Indian Americans, partly because of the rhetoric against China. There isn't, India is seen more as an ally of the United States, and Trump and some of the politicians have had such a rhetoric of Cold War against China that I think that leads to more prejudice in certain places against Chinese Americans. So we have to combat that as and recognize that discrimination. Second, I would just say that one thing that is interesting about the Indian American culture is it's quite entrepreneurial and quite risk-taking. And I do think that is something that can help get people in positions of leadership. You have to be willing to fail. And I do think that sense of risk, especially of that immigrant generation, is there.
A question about the big tech. I think you agree some regulation should be applied on their public policy, or especially all those affect the freedom of speech or transparency. Let's say you once brought this Internet Bureau of Rights.
Yes.
And how it goes? No. What's the status?
Nancy Pelosi asked me to draft the Internet Bill of Rights. We have drafted it. It is about basic rights: the right to know what's happening to your data, the right to consent before your data is collected, the right to consent before your data is transferred. And we're working now on getting it into a bill in the Energy and Commerce Process Committee. Obviously, Washington, unfortunately, moves at glacial speed. But it's a big detriment that the United States doesn't have a privacy law. In its place, Europe has the GDPR. But the Europe law is too suffocating. It doesn't sufficiently allow for innovation. I think America needs to have a well-crafted privacy regulation that allows for innovation but protects people's privacy.
You also tweeted today about this. about
Yes.
the data, right?
Yeah.
How to
That-
protect your data. Mhm.
Yeah, another issue about the big tech is some conservative content creators, they kind of like feel like, oh, you shadow ban us, like 'cause you, those big tech has like certain policy, like make their content more difficult to find, or sometimes they demonetize this video or content. What do you comment on that issue?
I think it's all political posturing. Look, the person who has benefited the most from social media is Donald Trump. He has the most
true.
Twitter followers. He has the biggest Facebook strategy. I mean, so it's how can they complain about bias when he's the most active user of social media and has the most followers? I mean, I don't complain about Fox News or talk radio that's on the right. I think there ought to be a First Amendment. I don't agree often with their perspective, but it's a First Amendment. I don't believe these platforms are biased.
They do
But I
have
see-
videos like get restricted, like they cannot do advisement like this one. Then it's, they have a channel called Trigger You. Then they got lots of videos restricted. Then that's why this guy sued Google, I think.
Well, first
Yeah,
of all, there are a lot
how-
of different platforms. If there's Bing search, there's Yahoo search. So just like if I don't like Fox News, I can go on MSNBC or CNN.
They are not.
You can make your
restricted, though,
choice.
right?
They
not.
restrict what programs you put on. I can't just go. I mean, Fox decides what they can put on. Google is a private company. It's not a government. I mean, the government has a First Amendment obligation.
Right.
Google is a private company. If a private company makes a decision, that's not censorship. Now, that said, I don't think Google is biased. I think Google is fair, and they restrict speech that incites violence or that is hate speech. But I think by and large they try to be fair.
So freedom of speech, you just touched upon the hate speech and those extreme rhetoric should be banned. I think in the line, it's just like this Nazi propaganda and related topics are actually banned in Germany, right?
Yes.
So some conservatives are saying that, oh, well, you know, the right-wing speakers are being banned, were banned or from Berkeley's invited speeches. And how do you address that?
That
Basically, there were a few right-wing
I see.
speakers. They were canceled due to the protests.
You know, I tend to be very strong in the First Amendment. If there is someone who I disagree with very vehemently or strongly, but they want to go speak at a college campus, I think they should be allowed to speak, as long as their speech isn't inciting violence or harming other individuals. I do think that our campuses should be open to a diversity of viewpoints.
Right.
Can I ask about your Twitter? Because I follow your Twitter these days. I saw you tweeted yesterday about green energy. You said there's a question every 2020 candidate should have to answer about green energy and climate change.
Yes.
So do you have an answer for that, or any ideas, plans?
I do. We need to win the clean energy race, not let China win it. China has almost over 50% of the electric vehicle market. China is massively developing solar and wind energy. China is developing battery storage. Why shouldn't America lead the 21st century in alternative energy?
Where should we start?
We should start with solar and wind farms. We should have massive tax credits for electric vehicle development. We should invest in battery storage so that we have the next generation of battery technology. We should invest in high-speed rail. You know, China has 18,000 miles of high-speed rail. We have 500 miles. Why aren't we doing more high-speed rail around this country?
So why do you think the high-speed rail in California actually stalled?
Well, it was terribly
Yeah.
implemented. I mean, we got caught up in all this politics. We need to make sure that if we're going to do it, we do it well.
Yeah. So what do you think of the Green Deals originally proposed by AOC and her colleagues? The timeline, do you think it's a little bit too aggressive in that they were saying that, oh, we have to do it in 11 years?
Well, their aspiration was we have to achieve zero emissions by by 2050, I think was what the Green New Deal said, and as expeditiously as possible. I do believe that is doable. I mean, that doesn't mean zero emissions means that you can also use carbon sinks. You can use carbon capture that removes carbon from the atmosphere. So, for example, you could have planting 1 trillion new trees that may remove carbon. But we have to deal with this issue with urgency and be bold and aspirational on developing alternative energy, on having carbon removal as part of the platform, on making sure that we have energy efficiency. And we need our world's best scientists working on this.
That's really great. Now, in the Bay Area, you know, the high housing prices as well as the rising homeless issues are creating a lot of controversies in the Bay Area. Certainly what's going on happening in Fremont is particularly troubling right now.
Yeah.
And are you following what's happening in Fremont?
I am. Yes. I said I'm glad I'm not on the city council.
I
don't
totally
blame you.
understand.
Yeah. So what do you think of the Housing Navigation Center's concept and design, and should it be built?
Well, let me, I don't want to speak about a local issue, which I'll leave for the city council, but I'll speak more broadly about the federal role for housing. I think what the federal role has to be is to assist in the building of affordable housing near public transportation, and to bring grants so that you can have affordable housing for professionals who can't afford to live here, and you have federal grants both through the building tax credit and through Section 8 vouchers and through grants for that kind of building, so we have more affordable housing in the area. And then we need to see where it makes sense to put that affordable housing within the Bay Area. And that affordable housing is not just for people who are homeless. It's for often people who are teachers, or people who are nurses, or people who are dental hygienists. I mean, how is this community going to sustain if the only people who could live here are software engineers?
Right.
We also are going to need to still have our teeth cleaned. We're still going to need our kids to go to school.
Yeah.
We're still going to need nurses. And you don't want them driving an hour and a half to get here.
Right.
So we do need workplace housing. And I think when people think of affordable housing, they just think about the homelessness issue. But that in this area, there are many working professionals who can't afford housing.
Yeah. You know, you ran a successful campaign at a very young age and became the congressman, so congratulations.
Thank
and
you.
what kind of future political aspirations do you have?
Well, I'm very, very proud to represent this district. Every member of Congress loves their district, but I think this is arguably the most important district in the world. We're at the hub of innovation, Silicon Valley, with Apple and Google, Intel, Yahoo, Cisco, LinkedIn, Tesla. Yeah. When we're going through a technology revolution. And we're the only Asian majority district in the
country,
continental United States.
Wow. Yeah.
At a time when Asia is going to matter a lot more than Europe. When the United States, China, and India are going to be the three countries that define the 21st century. So I have all of the opportunity to impact the nation and the world if I can do a good job from this congressional seat. And my goal for right now is to be an excellent member of Congress from Silicon Valley, an excellent member of Congress from the only Asian American district in the continental United States.
That's great. Are you going to run for president one day?
Good question. Good question.
I don't know. Maybe it'll be a Andrew Yang Ro Khanna ticket.
Yeah, that's right.
Why not? Why not?
Yeah, speaking of Silicon Valley, you once said, quote, Silicon Valley needs to give back to all Americans.
Yes.
Then how can we do it?
Well, this is something that I'm very passionate about. In fact, after I leave here tonight, I'm going to Iowa to work with Republican Governor Kim Reynolds. We have gotten Facebook to invest almost $100,000, a Microsoft CTO to put in money, Accenture to put in money, and we're creating dozens of scholarships for rural kids to learn digital marketing, to learn software design in 10-month, 14-month courses, and they're going to get employed for $50,000, $60,000 jobs. We need to bring these new technology jobs to communities left out. There's no reason we had to have 200,000 IT jobs go offshore. Some of these jobs can be done in this country. And if we can show that Silicon Valley is creating these jobs across America, then I think we begin to stitch this country back together. Then I think you lessen the fear of the immigrant, the fear of the other, the fear of other nations, if people see that their lives are improving.
Right. So do you have anything else to say to the Chinese American community?
I said that this country needs the Chinese American community more today than ever before, to help be a bridge, to make sure that two emerging great powers do not end up in a posture of a Cold War, to help continue to lead in technology and innovation, to making a contribution to the country, to help spread the digital revolution and opportunity to other parts of America. And I say to the young Chinese Americans, you know, maybe Andrew Yang is going to get 3-4%, but I guarantee in your lifetime, if you're 18 or 20, we will have a Chinese American president. So you should dream as big as you want to dream.
That's wonderful to hear, and thank you for your confidence.
So much. And a happy early birthday.
Thank you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you
Thank
know,
you.
Happy early birthday
one
to you.
day after the third debate next week.
You're so kind.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's your birthday.
Now you know why she's the best host,
I know.
right?
Well, this was great. So this will air on...
Well, it will be widely distributed to
What?
the Chinese American different
Online.
WeChat groups,
Right.
online, so on
Perfect.
and so forth.
I would love to do it, you know, maybe once every 6 months or once
Yeah,
every
please
year.
come back
Would be
again.
excellent.
Yeah.
So that we can keep
Excellent.
the constituency informed of what
Yeah.
I'm doing.
Congressman, you know what? I'm not wearing a tie, not out of disrespect to you, but because I'm following Andrew Yang.